partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast number 339. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast, I got Andy Cajun Junkin here with me from Stubborn.farm, sorry. And he's been doing this thing, man. How you been, Andy?
If I was any finer, I'd be illegal.
I know the feeling. So, Andy, you've been out and about doing your various workshops and talking about some stuff, and you brought up a good topic here today. I think that is one of those ones that in any industry, no matter what it is, farming or anything else, the narcissistic traits that come out in people, especially people that are at the top on the management side of things, and approaching that. So I guess talk a little bit about that and how are you approaching this topic here with guys?
Well, last year I read 37 books on the topic, and kind of became a gained a lot of expertise as a result of it, because I see a lot of farm families fall apart related to succession planning when somebody's just concerned about their own needs. My first book was actually called Farm Succession Shouldn't Be Done in the Funeral Home. So there was actually one father that I got called out to talk to. His attitude was, well, when I'm dead, they can fight over my estate. I'm going to be gone. Why do I care? Right. So getting him to shift his mindset from just being concerned about his own needs to think about, what's the sense of a man spending his life building up a farm if the only thing that's left of his legacy is a gravestone that looks really nice about 30 years down the road? Yeah. You got to shift your mindset from me to we. You got to be concerned about not just what the here and now, what I got to get done throughout the end of the day, but what's my legacy going to be 30 years after I'm gone? Right. And that starts with being concerned about the needs of others. And, I think the thing about farming is that that's different from this generation, as it's spoken about in the past, is the difference between our generation of farming as opposed to 50 years ago. 50 years ago, you could be Clint Eastwood, right? You could be stubborn SOB, right? And where it's just you're concerned about your own needs. But the thing is that, what's different about our generation as opposed to 50 years ago is basically modern health sciences has been a game changer. And back in the 60s, when Dad was 60, he would retire because his hips were shot. Nowadays, when Dad's got bad hips, he goes in for hip surgery. He's farming to his 80s or 90s. And so we got four generations farming together. We also have 3-4 siblings or cousins farming together, because it doesn't make sense every 25 years to be splitting up the capital. So instead of there being one owner of the farm, you got multiple shareholders. And the thing is in that environment, being a narcissist, if you have 3-4 partners that are narcissistic, it's just going to lead to dysfunctional business decisions where basically everybody's butting heads and pulling the farm in different directions, and decisions are not getting made or not getting made adequately. More importantly, it's just going to cause so many headaches that you just don't want to work there. Right. So we got to shift the mindset of the family farm from me to we. And so, I've been working with a lot of stubborn farm families for the last 15 years and really developed a lot of expertise in narcissism, because that is the elephant in the room in a lot of operations. And so how do you rewire the the mindset of a farmer that's really just focused on what he has to get done for the day and get through his needs, And how do you get him to be concerned about the needs of others and thinking big picture about the long term of the success of the farm?
Right on. So how do you go about doing that? I mean, that's a huge coaching thing. What you just laid out there sounds easy, but there's a big monumental task involved with that.
Well, I think first of all, I want to just quickly cover the fact that farming has actually been shown. That there was a scientific study with Walden University by a guy named Steve Murdoch back in 2017, and he actually identified that farmers and lawyers are actually the highest degree of narcissist, and that's because when you're a lawyer, you use your words to shape your environment around you. When you're a farmer, you basically are the boss and you're telling people what to do. And when you say jump, your employees say how high. When people come onto your farm to sell you equipment, they're going to tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. And even, sons and daughters that are 25, they come home from college, their moms are bringing them meals to the field based on their schedule, right? And it's a real easy environment on the family farm where you become king of the kingdom, and it's really easy environment for that nurtures narcissistic mindset. And so, when you're an alcohol, a lot of feed salesmen, they become alcoholics because, they're always drinking with clients, always entertaining clients. And, they become as a result of their job, it's an occupational hazard for them by the time they're in the 50s, become alcoholics. Well, the same thing with farmers. If you're the boss, you're the running the show, it's really easy for you to fall in the trap of a narcissistic mindset. I know myself, when I was a farming with my dad, I was a narcissist. I'm embarrassed to say that. I feel like you're seeing me in my underwear. But I just want to show that I'm actually wearing pants today. But anyways, the thing is I'm not one of those guys who wears underwear when he's on a Zoom call. But the thing is, I feel really embarrassed to say that I was a narcissist. But I spent a lot of time gaining wisdom, both by helping farmers. I became more self-aware of my own inadequacies. And, the thing about narcissist is, I remember 10 years ago when I was doing a mediation, there was several times we staged kind of an intervention. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, where basically one family member, they were narcissistic to the point it was toxic to the family relationships or toxic to succession planning. And, we'd have situations where family members be calling their fathers or their sons narcissistic, and quite often it was often the pot calling the kettle black. And I did the same thing with my dad. I called him narcissistic, and I probably was equally as guilty. I hate to admit that, but it's true. And so I think the thing is that instead of categorizing somebody, reading like a survey and saying, okay, my partner has 14 out of 16 of narcissistic traits, I think what we need to do is identify what are narcissistic traits and what's the opposite of that. And just so that like my 3-year-old, his name is Samuel Colt, and he's a great kid, but he's also a narcissist, and that's because it's all about him. And hopefully over the next 10 years we'll be able to shape his world so he's thinking about the needs of those around us. But as I said, as we get into being in business and being the boss, we get shaped into worlds where we're just concerned about what we have to get done for the day and our own needs. And we tend to manipulate people around us and manipulate the environment as businessmen to suit our needs. And it's really easy to fall into that narcissistic mindset. So I think what we got to do is I'm going to list off 10 traits of what are the opposite of a narcissist.
Okay.
And what I want to do is just there's probably one or two things that the listeners can probably say, oh, my wife accused me of that. Like something like being envious of others, right? So maybe for a farmer to, instead of labeling his partners as being narcissistic, what would happen if you looked at every month or every quarter and identify one narcissistic trait and then trying to turn that from a personal weakness into a strength. Even if you think that you may not have that deficiency that bad, why not see farming as a challenge to become a better person instead of telling your partners how they could be a better person? Right. So I'm going to list off the 10 narcissistic traits, and I want everybody to listen to it and maybe just identify one thing that you may be a little bit guilty on.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about how you can actually turn that from weakness into strength. So the first is never be arrogant and be respectful to everyone. I mean, that's a good trait for anybody to adapt, right?
Sure.
You don't have to be a narcissist to adapt that trait.
It's a good
never believe yourself to be superior or that important. Never need praise. You know when you've done a good job and you don't need recognition for it. Do you know how many farmers that are in their 20s that live and die based on what their dad says? You know how many young farmers I've had that have quit farming because they needed recognition from their parents for what they've done and how that caused their whole lives to implode, how they treated their spouses like crap because their dad said negative words to them all the time, because they're fragile narcissists, right? Because of that simple trait itself, needing recognition, right? If a person stops needing recognition and knows when they've done a good job, it can fundamentally change the color of the sky in your world.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth thing is never feel entitled to anything or anyone's respect. Earn it daily. Number 5, be humble and never have a bloated sense of accomplishment. Number 6, be empathetic and understanding, sharing the feeling of others. Number 7, never envy others or believe anyone envies you. How many times are we concerned about what the neighbors think about us?
Yeah.
How many times does that cause us to make bad decisions because we're concerned about what the neighbors think? We're buying a nice truck when we could be driving a used truck because we're concerned about putting on a big show for the neighbors. How many farms implode because of that? Number 8, never disrespect rules or personal boundaries. How many farmers are walking into their son or daughter's house without ringing the doorbell because they own the farmhouse, right? They feel the no need to ring the doorbell in order to go get a glass of milk out of the fridge, right? How many spouses really get offended by parents walking in unannounced? It's really high because there's no personal boundaries. And how many daughter-in-laws go from being on a pedestal to falling off the pedestal when they speak up about setting personal boundaries? Number 9, stop taking advantage of others. Be respectful of the value of other people's time or assets. And number 10, be grateful for the little wins and appreciate everyone's contribution. So the thing is, Casey, within those 10 things, everybody that's listening probably could identify 2 or 3 that if they really were truthful with themselves, they're guilty of.
Sure. Yeah.
I myself have a couple of things here I got to work on.
Oh, yeah. There's a few things on that
But
list.
the thing is that what I'm saying to the listeners is that if you can have just make a change yourself, maybe share this video with your partners or share this podcast with your partners, and everybody takes this on as maybe the family identifies one bad habit we have. We might be not respectful of boundaries. We might not appreciate one another, right? And make a pact as a family. Hey, we all share this narcissistic trait. Why don't we all work on that for the next 3 months and make a pact to try to turn that from weakness to a strength? If you adapted that every 90 days and held each other's feet to the fire to actually sticking to that trait. So, being something like being empathetic. If your partners knew what empathy was, because they heard the quality, be empathetic and understanding of sharing the feelings and concerns of others. If you kept on using the word empathetic and held each other's feet to the fire to actually turn that from weakness to strength over 90 days, how much different would a lot of operations be? And if you adapted 4 changes you did that every 90 days, took on a new value out of those 10 values, that'd be 4 changes to how your family works together. how much different would the operation be in a year's time? Right.
Yep.
That's how you turn narcissism from weakness to a strength.
Mm-hmm.
And I've studied a lot of books. If you go online, just go to Udemy just for giggles, and you'll see all these so-called psychologists. They all suggest one solution to a narcissist, and that one solution is to leave your narcissistic partner. And I did that. I live 1,000 miles away from my hometown of Bobcaygeon, Ontario, Canada. I live in Iowa now. And I can tell you that, and my parents got divorced because my mom claimed my dad was a narcissist, and he was. She was too, though. And the thing is that, divorce is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Both my parents are not happy because they got divorced, right? That has not made our family any better. I don't accept the solution that the psychology profession has for narcissism as the simple solution to divorce. That's never going to make anybody happy. But the thing is instead of pointing blame at each other and calling each other names, if we can see this is a challenge to become a better person for all of us, it can be a game changer to both the success of the farm and also the success of the family and the success of the individual.
Yep. So some of the folks that you've worked with there, you before you came on the call here, you had a group that you're working with, and you kind of sound like you outlined a little bit of what those 10 traits that you're talking about, that all three of the people in that group may have had more than half of those traits in their mix.
Yeah, they're basically, it was it's kind of funny you said that. Yeah, I mean basically for them, they're going to there's basically 5 partners in the partnership, and they don't the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. Nobody has respect for one another. They're not empathetic for each other's needs. They really couldn't care if how the other person feels. They're just concerned about themselves, and they all recognized how toxic that is. And I just got off the first call with them, but we just adapted. I'll just list it to you. Here's the 3 things that we identified as core family values, and that is nobody smarter than the other guy. We're going to make smarter decisions together. The right hand doesn't know what the left knows what the left hand's doing and thinking. You're going to say what you do and then do what you say, and no blaming or belittling or complaining. We're going to solve problems and proactively solve problems constructively and proactively together as a team. Now, those partners agreed to write those all out every morning. And by them actually writing it out, instead of us just having a meeting and then everybody forgetting about what they said next Tuesday, by them actually writing that out every day for the next 90 days, it's gonna get in the back of their heads. Right. And then basically as they quit work at the end of the day, they have to give themselves a score on a score A to F. So for instance, no blaming, belittling, or complaining, which is all narcissistic qualities. If they actually score themselves, okay, how did I actually, when they put their work boots on in the morning, they set that as a goal. Today, I'm not going to belittle my son. I'm not going to belittle my dad. If they actually, when they put their work boots on, if they write that out, it might take 5 minutes extra for them when they're sitting down to put on the work boots. But if that results in them being a better partner to work with, how much more work are they going to get done in the course of the 10 hours after? And more importantly, I mean, the scientific studies have shown by you actually writing out your goals and then grading yourself at the end of the day as to how you did on your goals of how you want to become a better person, you're 10 times more likely to get the results you want in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
And what the hell's the sense that you put on your work boots in the morning to go work in 10 hours if your family is not going to be farming in 10 years' time because you're jerks to each other?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I mean, we don't inherit teacups or china and tractors from grandma. We inherit bad habits. You're actually in the environment where you were born and raised. For you to get, you developed a lot of good habits as a result of your family, but you also developed a lot of bad habits.
Yeah.
And a good chunk of those habits are related to narcissism. And if you, as a farmer, can write out your goals every morning as to what's one thing that generally what are three things that I want to turn from weakness to strength, right? Today, I'm not going to blame. I'm not going to belittle. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to solve problems constructively and proactively together as a team. If you have a farmer write that out every morning, do that for 90 days. And then when he comes in the house at night to take off his work boots, if he gives himself a D because he was belittling his little brother without even thinking about it, he's going to reflect on that when he goes in the house to have a shower, and he's going to approach things differently tomorrow.
Yep.
And, when I was a kid, 98% of decisions made on the farm are emotional. That's just a scientifically proven fact. 98% of decisions are emotional, not rational. And I've seen a lot of smart men do really stupid things because they're really sharp when it comes to intellectual acumen, but when it comes to their emotional intelligence, they're just idiots, right? And that's because it's really easy to get wrapped up in what you have to get done and just be concerned about your short-term goals, what you got to get done throughout the day, and not care about how the motivation or the needs of other people around you. And the thing is that when you're putting on your work boots, and you're taking them off, and you're giving yourself a grade, A to F, how I did, it's like putting a bridle on your horse. See, the thing is that what we want to do is get farmers to start making decisions based on rational behavior instead of emotional behavior. And see, when I was a kid, I used to ride a horse in my grandpa's pasture field. It was a big Clydesdale, and I was about 100 pounds wet. And I'd jump on that Clydesdale in the pasture field, and that horse wouldn't buck me off, but it would go wherever it wanted to go, right? It wasn't until I put the bridle on that horse would go where I wanted it to go. And that horse in that analogy represents emotions, because your emotions are 10 times more powerful than your rational behavior. And then that 100-pound farm boy, that represents your rational behavior. And so the thing is, if you put on your work boots every morning, what's that take you? 2 minutes to do that? If you spend an extra 5 minutes writing out one simple line like, no blaming, belittling, or complaining, and then as you take off your work boots at night, ask yourself, how did I do today on that? That is going to be like putting a bridle on a horse and changing your behavior so that your emotions aren't controlling you, you're controlling your emotions. And the thing is that farming is emotional. Farming is emotional. And if you can get your family, not just yourself, but all your family members, making decisions based on rational behavior rather than talking about acting like mature adults instead of my boy Samuel Colt, who's 3 years old, makes all his decisions based on emotion and his instant needs.
Right. Yeah.
How much different is your farm going to be in a year's time? And more importantly, if you can reduce the amount of temper tantrums on your farm by to 10% of what it is today, how much better is your farm going to be from a perspective of a place you want to work? And more importantly, how much better is it going to be and easier is it going to be for you guys to communicate and be able to make decisions based on rational behavior rather than emotions?
Right. Yeah. The emotional thing is a thing. And I think I'll say this one last thing here as we kind of wrap it up here, but unlike, I don't want to say that owning a business, something outside agriculture is not, emotionally tied to, people don't get emotionally tied to those things and make those same decisions.
Yeah.
The difference between, I think, and when it comes to farming and ranching and those kind of things is that there's also a lifestyle that comes along with that. And that lifestyle is also a defining trait of the people that are doing those jobs, working those farms and thing. And that's easy for someone to get wrapped up in that. And then I'm guilty as anybody else. When you start looking back at the accomplishments that you've made and how you've built something up from nothing, it's sometimes you do get that maybe I am kind of a big deal mentality, and you can easily fall into that groove if you're not careful.
Yeah. And I think we talk about entitlement, right? And we think about entitlement as far as like somebody coming home to the farm and just taking it for granted. I think it's equally that we just don't take the farm for granted. We take each other for granted.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is that, Casey, I'm polite with you, but I'm sure that, I mean, I treated my dad like crap. I hate to say that, but I did. Right. And if he was honest, he would say the same thing about how he treated me. But we were the nicest people in our hometowns. Right. And most liked, I mean, University of Guelph, I was, anyways, and the thing is that we're quite nice to strangers. Right. And I think that's most people are like that. Very few people are overly kind to their family and rude to strangers. Too often we take each other for granted.
Yep.
And the thing is that the thing that matters most to you is the farm and your relationship with the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing is that instead of having an attitude of entitlement, we got to have an attitude of humility and gratitude. And I would suggest, in addition to writing out your goals for how you want a couple of character traits you want to turn from weaknesses to strengths, there'll be two things you also write down on that sheet of paper. And that one thing you write down is, what's one thing I did today that my partners were not expecting me to do that was nice for them when they got out of bed in the morning, that they were not expecting.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not asking you to give your siblings a piece of pie. But I had a farmer, and he had actually had the for sale sign out on his front lawn of his farm when I showed up. And about 3 weeks later, he said to me, my son walked across a yard and he actually helped me hook up a wagon. He said 6 weeks ago, he would have never done that. And something simple like that, like the son was actually, what we had him doing was actually looking for opportunities to help his dad out, not just be concerned about his own needs for the day.
Yeah.
When you start doing kind things like that for each other, actually having to write that down at the end of the day will actually cause you to actually start looking for opportunities to be kind to one another.
Yep.
And I mean, whether or not your partner chooses to reciprocate those things or not, doesn't matter. I mean, the golden rule, regardless of what religion you're in, is do unto others as that you would have them do unto you, not as they do unto you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can actually choose to become a better person, to try to be kind by turning a bad character trait to a good trait, but also be looking for opportunities to be kind to others, right? Especially to our family members, who we often take for granted. It's going to be a game changer to where your family's going to be in 30 years' time. More importantly, where you're even going to be in 30 days' time.
Yep. So, kind of one thing I'll add to that, I think it's a good check when you start thinking about how you're talking to people and how you're interacting with people, is listen to a podcast the other day, and I don't remember which one it was, but the guy said his wife pulled him aside and said, if somebody else other than you talked to me the way you just talked to me, what would you do to them? You know what I mean? And he's like, that's an amazing point. So I think, it's the same thing. Like, me and my brother go back and forth with each other all the time, especially when we were younger. But, God help the person that did it to my brother, if I was standing, you know what I mean? So it's an amazing, if you put it in that perspective and you think about it like that, if someone else said that same thing to whoever it is that you're talking to, what would your reaction be, or what would your perception of that person be? That's a pretty good litmus test as to whether or not you're going down the right path or not.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that we get a lot of challenges thrown at us in farming, but I look at farming as a challenge to become a better person every day.
Yep.
And if you have a family that all adapt that attitude, instead of taking each other for granted and the farm for granted, the probability of you guys having family Christmas together in 10 years' time is 10 times better.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Andy, but I think that's a good place to stop
right
here. So if folks want to reach out to you and get more information about the consulting that you do or the workshops that you do, what's the best way to do that, Andy?
I just go to stubborn.farm, www.stubborn.farm. And we do a workshop once a week, and this is actually a good chunk. Part of what we talk about, is basically I give away 10 simple, they're counterintuitive, but they're practical ideas, just like we talked about in our one-day workshop. We don't ever charge for the workshop until after you've gone through the course and you felt you got real value for it. And so you can find out about the workshop at www.stubborn.farm. And I think that's a great place for folks to get to know me.
Right on.
And I'll also send them a free copy of my book. If anybody wants to just get a free copy of my book, Bulletproof Your Farm, go to my website and sign up for it, and I'll send one to you in the mail for free.
Right on, man. And then you write some other articles in some other places. Where could they find some of your work out there?
Progressive Dairyman has a lot, and I think that that's a good place to start. Go to agproud.com. You could look, just put in Junkin, Junkin. You see up a lot of articles. I actually wrote one on it called "Are You Farming with a Toddler?" And it was about narcissistic traits. And so, I think that might be something a lot of farmers have found interesting, and you might as well.
Right on. Okay, I'll check that out.
Okay.
Well, Andy, I appreciate you being on the podcast, man. I always enjoy it when you come on.
Yeah, appreciate that, lad. You take care.
Right on. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast and check out the video version of this over on the YouTube channel, which is the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. Check it out there. Go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related. And if you're interested in attending the Moving Iron Summit coming up here in Nashville, Tennessee, September 11th through the 13th, hit me up at Moving Iron Podcast at MovingIronPodcast.com, or just go over to the website and you can sign up there. Andy, where can they find you on social media at?
Stubborn.farm.
Stubborn.farm on all of them.
Stubborn.farm.com. I mean, stubborn.farm is where you start.
Right
I'm
on.
not much of a social media kind of guy.
Yeah,
so.
me either.
Yeah.
Right on. Me either.
So, okay.
All right.
You take care.
Right on. I'm Casey Seymour with Andy Junkin. Good smart folks. Out.
Moving higher in the 21st century. Hardworking people working hard for you and me. Moving higher, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving higher.